I want to talk a little bit about kind of unusual chip shapes and how you might approach carving them. In this example of a coaster in the rosette, I've got these weird, they're kind of like arrowheads, almost like teeth. Definitely a weird shape. And the way that I approach this is first, you can check out my video on understanding the shape on the inside, the ridges and the valleys on the inside of a chip. But I can recognize that I'm going to have kind of this shape with a couple of lines coming in like that. And you can see that matches up with what I've got over here. I've got a line that runs all the way down. It turns from a ridge into a valley, and then those four lines that kind of come out like spokes. So that's the shape that I'm ultimately going to end up having. There's kind of two different low points in there. There's one low point where these two meet, and then an even lower point here where these two sides meet. So rather than doing these just all perimeter cuts and trying to take this chip out as one chip, what I actually found to be helpful is if I take it out as separate chips. So if I kind of continue this line over, continue this line over, now I have a four-sided shape. This big one comes out here, and then those two sides there. And this is a little bit tricky when you have this wide of an angle. This isn't a straight line, and so I do need to meet this angle, and that can be hard to kind of get the knife in there. But I found that works better than trying to do it all at once. So I'll go ahead and remove this first chip, or this first section of the chip anyway. Now this one's a bit of a tricky spot where the grain transitions, so I'm gonna see if I can remove some of this to relieve pressure for myself. More depth on there. And you can see this is opposite the chip, so it's the same exact chip and grain direction on this side, and I had a little bit of a hard time with that, so trying to make that correction on this side, and I think I did make that correction. Just need to kind of even these up here, see if I can get this point to be in line. Those two are not symmetrical. So I want to make this a little bit steeper. There we go. That's better. So I've removed most of it, but now I still have these two little kind of legs coming off of there. And I've got this line. Again, I should probably remove a little bit more because I want to make sure that my deep parts line up, because I'm going to be using those to make my subsequent cuts. So now I've got this line. Hopefully you can see the shadow here that runs right down the middle. So I'm going to now put the edge of the knife on that line, put the tip of the knife right there on that middle crease that I made, and now cut this out. And so now same thing, put my tip down at that spot, put the blade on the beginning of that line, remove that. And now I've got that spot, put the tip right in that same spot, edge on the line, I'll go ahead and flip this for sake of grain direction. It's a little bit harder because now I want to get it to end with the tip there. It's easier if I can start with the tip where I want it, but managed to make that one work. So even though it ends up being one chip, it's definitely easier on a weird kind of complex shape like this to go ahead and simplify it, carve out easier chips, and then carve out the other pieces. And you probably see me do that in some other videos where I've had similar chips like this, or even a more common example is with the Gothic leaf shape, where you carve out these sides, leave a square, and then you remove these four sides separately from the square. But this is kind of a little bit different sort of version of that, where I'm removing more of the chip rather than something kind of outside of the chip. So anyway, something to think about for interesting shapes like that, if you can break it down into smaller or simpler, just easier to carve pieces rather than going all at once.